That's the elephant in the room is autism.
Yes.
But a more clear example is the flu vaccine, right? Everybody's told, get your annual flu shot. We're targeting the variant that's going around. Flu vaccines don't work. They don't do shit. There was a study done in 2005, published in Annals of Medicine, and they were trying like anything. This is an NIH study, and they tried everything they could to prove that the measles vaccine worked, and they found it didn't work. So what happened? The story that Cheryl Atkinson did on it was pulled from the CBS News website so that nobody would know about it. And the scientists who were involved in the study were ordered by the CDC not to talk to the media. That's the flu study. So today, the CDC happily recommends the flu vaccine, even though they know from the NIH study that it doesn't work.
To August of last year, nobody really knew who I was.
There's about 12 people who are producing 65% of anti-vaccine misinformation.
We need to come together as Americans and realize that we have a war at hand here. Right?
Like, dude, how scared of this shit do you have to be to be wearing gloves, a face shield, a mask at this point?
Help us to urge folks and say to them, look, it's time to roll up your sleeve and get the shot.
Chiropractor in Omaha, Nebraska, responsible for 65% of the anti-vaccine misinformation. Put what I say to the test. Just don't write me off as crazy misinformation.
Doctor, please bring yourself in order.
600,000 people will die of cancer. 300,000 people will die of obesity this year. When is enough enough?
Steve, how you been doing, buddy? Good. Fighting the good fight. It's been an honor to stand in the foxhole with you. We're just going to dive right into this. We have a lot to talk about, and we are both standing back to back in this fight against evil and the corruption with vaccinations. And so I just appreciate the fight that you're in, because obviously, you're a data guy, you're a no BS kind of guy. And so I just want to just have a casual conversation, because there's so much we can talk about in this realm, and there's only a certain few people that understand the realm that we're in and can really articulate the issues at hand from just a data side, a scientific side, because they claim, the science isn't settled, and we're up against, a lot of corruption.
Yep.
So anyway, we're going to dive in.
All right. So you ready to get started?
Yeah. Let's do it. We're starting. So tell me what's new and on your end, and what have you been up to?
Well, I've got a $3.3 million debate with Sarah Wilf on whether the COVID vaccines have killed more than saved. And I think that they haven't saved anybody, and they've killed a lot of people, hundreds of thousands of people in the United States. This is between 2021 and 2022.
I mean, I've been in this fight for 2 decades, and I have not seen thrombosis at an all-time high like it is. Myocarditis, again, a normal physician would see a myocarditis case, once in their career, twice in their career, and now it's on the regular. We have 120,000% increase in thrombosis in the last 4 years. I mean, this should be a no-brainer debate.
It should be.
Yeah.
So when you say that increase in thrombosis, where are you getting that number?
I've seen it from this data, CDC, the NBRSS.
100,000 fold?
I've seen stats up to 120,000% increase. So compared to the years prior, again,
I'd like to see that stat, because I can't see a number like that from looking at the CDC data.
Well, let me
so-called underlying cause of death or multiple causes of death.
Right. Well, there has been either way. There has been a massive increase in thrombosis. The fact that they are now admitting that there's an increase in thrombosis post-vaccination. So the thing is, what data are they going off of that say that vaccine saves. I should rephrase that. What observational data?
What observational data are they going off to claim that vaccines are safe?
They're saving lives.
Oh, there are many studies that claim a vaccine efficacy against death of over 90%. The only issue with those studies is that if they had studied a placebo shot for COVID, they would have found a 90% efficacy against death. So basically, they're just measuring a vaccine which does nothing and finding a 90% efficacy against death. But the point is that if you gave people a placebo shot, you'd see the same efficacy, because the efficacy you're seeing is simply the difference in mortality between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated, and also the non-proportional response to COVID. So if you're twice as likely to die, or let's say you're 100 times more likely to die of all causes than someone much younger than you, you're 1,000 times more likely to die if you got COVID. So it's not proportional to your underlying mortality. So the combination of those two effects, where you're typically, if you're unvaccinated, you could be 3, 4, or 5 times more likely to die than people who are vaccinated, just because you chose not to be vaccinated. And that's not because the choice changed you. It's just that in general, people who decline vaccination are less healthy. Could be a combination of factors, but the statistics are pretty clear. Once you make that decision, there's this big divide between the people who are vaccinated and people who are unvaccinated in terms of mortality. Every paper ignores that and thinks that they can model it. And there was just a study out of Qatar that was published where reviewer number 2 commented in comment number 4 saying, gee, the most important thing out of this paper is that you cannot adjust for the HVE effect. You have to measure it. So that's how they get this perceived vaccine benefit, because they're just doing really bad science.
Right. So going back, it was 112,000% increase, not 120. It was after analyzed VAERS. They found reports of cerebral thrombosis. Okay.
Okay. So this is.
I'm going to send you the link.
This is in VAERS, though. It's not in UCOD or MCOD.
No, it's in VAERS.
It's
okay. But I trust VAERS. It's a felony to falsify a report.
Right. Of course.
First of all,
of course.
I don't care what Peter Hote says.
Yeah. So they'll just claim that this is a
anecdotal.
No. They'll say it's just because people were 120,000 times more likely to report it.
Right.
Then it's a real signal.
That's exactly right. But if you look, so it was actually compared, though. They did a comparison. Like you said, that probably will just say it's a 120,000% increase in the last 3 years, but they compared it over the last 34 years, and they found just statistically in the last 3 years.
Can you? Is there a chat here that you can put that in?
It's under Nicholas. I follow Nicholas Holscher, and I think he's doing phenomenal at like getting the truth out there.
Yeah. Okay.
And let me just tag you on his post, okay, on X, and then you can find that. So I just tagged you, Steve, on X. But either way, there's so much to unpack here from a cytotoxicity standpoint, from also these cardiovascular obstructions. And this is why we have, this isn't normal thrombosis. In normal blood clots, as you know, will be in the arms or legs. The fact that we're finding these in vital organ areas is suspect, because we have them in our heart and lungs, we have them in brain, we have them in liver. But the fact that we're even talking about that these clots are found in the brain causing issues in healthy populations is a real concern. But I want to talk to you because, when we, I remember being on X, we got in a debate, and the ladies we had, I think it was a family that had triplets and they had vaccine injury all in the same day. These children, they had an injury at 12. The boy looked up at the sky and the porch light was on and nobody was home and never spoke again. The other brother did the same thing an hour later, and then the sister 4 hours later did the same thing. And the lady goes, "That's anecdotal evidence," and it's and we're gaslighting these poor people.
You can't. This is the only time in human history where triplets got autism within hours of each other, right?
Yes. Right.
The only time in human history.
Right. And, and not only that,
and they think it's a coincidence?
Yeah, they think it's a coincidence. And this is comical.
Okay, well, could be.
Right.
Could be a coincidence.
And in fact, and if you go to
Can't rule it out.
Can't rule it out. In fact, Steve, do you remember that debate? Because the lady goes, "This is," she said, "autism is genetic. There are, and she said there are other environmental factors." I said, "What you just said contradicted yourself, because you can't have environmental factors and be genetic at the same time."
Correct.
Funny. Epigenetic and then genetic. There's a difference.
Right.
And so to me, it was quite comical. And I said, "You just contradicted yourself, because you just admitted that there are epigenetic factors in autism, which is due to toxicity and deficiency in the environment." And so, and from your standpoint, how vaccination, first of all, I argue, is all anecdotal. They say that vaccine saves lives. There is no observational data, because you can have a double-blind placebo health group. I was never vaccinated in my life, ever. My siblings were never vaccinated. None of my kids, I have 5 kids, none of my kids have been vaccinated, and they don't contract these diseases that we have vaccines for. And, and this is the comical thing, because they're like, "Well, we vaccinated group A and they never got measles. We vaccinated group A, they never got polio. See, the vaccines work." Well, that's anecdotal. There's no observational data to confirm that. How would you say to that?
I look at the data, the record level data from the Czech Republic, and I don't have to guess about observations in small numbers. I can look at large numbers, and I can see there's no benefit from the vaccine. When you mortality match the cohorts, so you can eliminate the healthy vaccinee effect, signal goes away. Benefit signal goes away.
And it's observational.
It's not observational. It's all record level data. It's the entire population. You're not observing. You're not observing anything. You could say it's observational in the sense that it's not it's not a randomized trial. But you can you create cohorts. You create fixed cohorts, and you create them at a fixed point in time, and you say, "Okay, if you've been vaccinated by this time, you're in group A, and if you haven't been vaccinated by this time, you're in group B." And you just compare the mortality of the two cohorts. That is the single best way to find truth.
Why can't we do that in the States?
Oh, because epidemiologists reject it, because they're not taught that.
Right. So
they're taught that the only way you can compare groups is if you look at what the age distribution is and what the comorbidities are and what the sex distribution is between the groups, and try to match them on all the comorbidities, and then you can have a matched group. But if you only care about death, which is the only thing I care about in this contest, you should be characterizing groups based on the number of deaths and the slope of the death curve. It's the slope of the deaths per week that characterizes a population. It is not the number of deaths per week. You have two populations that have dramatically different deaths per week. What matters is the slope of those two lines, because the slope is constant over time. A given cohort will have a constant slope. It'll vary a little bit over a year, but unless there's dramatic differences in the ages that they'll both have slopes that are very close to each other, and so they won't diverge over time.
So what have you seen in the last few years in regards to the slope?
Well, easy. For the unvaccinated, the slopes are constant, unless there's a non-proportional hazard that happens. So when I say constant, I mean with respect to the other cohort. So if you take all people aged 50 and you compare them with all people aged 40, a 10-year age difference, big comorbidity difference, 60, I don't care what it is, 30 years age difference, then you're going to find that the ratio between the two is constant. And this is all about Gompertz mortality. Right. The point is that people, any group of people that you have, doesn't matter what the mix of whatever it is, they're going to die on a straight line over a 1-year period. And that line is going to have a slope, might be like 6% a year or whatever, but it's going to be a straight line. It's not going to be a curved line. It'll be a straight line. Slope differences like the mortality differences, the frailty and age of the cohorts, and also the sex mix. So you can have some cohorts that slope up because they're younger. The older you get, or the more frail you get, the slope goes more flat and then starts to slope downwards. So if you have two cohorts, you can have one cohort where the slope is up, another cohort where the slope is down. But the ratio of the two remains constant over time. And if there are differences, then those differences are due to differential response to external stimuli. For instance, one cohort is vaccinated and the other one isn't. Or it can be inherent things like this cohort is vaccinated, this one isn't. And this guy his slope changes over time. That's not supposed to happen in a fixed cohort. That indicates a problem. A relative slope change relative to your to your control.
And you're seeing that on a massive scale.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. In Japan, it's like it slopes like this. They give a shot, slope goes up. And then that continues. And then they give another shot, slope goes up. They give another shot, slope goes up. So it's unambiguous. People don't look at the data.
Right.
Or they don't know how to look at the data. I mean, it's so obvious when you know what you're doing, which I'm finding very few people actually know more than me about this. In fact, I haven't found anyone who's teaching me and showing me how I made a mistake on this stuff, because people don't focus on it. They basically take the tried and true epidemiology methodologies. They say, okay, we'll apply that. We'll do Kaplan-Meier survival curves, or we'll do the Cox proportional hazards model. So they reach into their known toolbox that they were taught in school, and there's no novel thinking about this. And for the COVID vaccines, you can't use the standard tools. You need to go and use fixed cohorts and look at the slopes and use the cumulative ratios of the you take the cumulative deaths and you take the ratios of those, and that tells you everything you need to know.
So what's the difference between the Czech Republic data? Why are you going to the Czech? Is it Czech or not the Czech?
They're the only ones who exposed the full record level data for everybody in the country.
So, and here's the thing, it's comical because, I know for a fact that we have manipulation of data in the United States on our national vital reporting system from the data collection of the CDC. I've been putting on lectures for over 2 decades on how they're manipulating data around the flu shot. And I talk about how, 90% of the deaths occur in the elderly. They have comorbidities. They're on 13 plus medications. We have differences in viral and bacterial pneumonia. And then they throw all that under one umbrella and say, look, 80,000 people die of the influenza every year. And it's like, well, what about, comorbidities? They had poor lifestyle, all these different things, but they don't care. They take that number, they give it to the media, and the media is like, oh my gosh, and they push fear mongering on the people, and that's manipulation of data.
Yeah, well, and like the measles, for example, like people are blaming Kennedy for the measles outbreaks, right? Because people are less likely to get vaccinated. Do you know what impact Kennedy has had on measles vaccination?
I mean, I'd like to say that he's hindering
but what do you think the percentage difference is? You think Kennedy has dropped it from 95% to,
I mean, I've heard stats from like 60%, but
okay, I'll tell you what the number is. It's less than a fraction of 1%. Because the only kids that get vaccinated that are allowed to get vaccinated for measles are the young kids. I mean, there are two measles shots. You get it when you're really young, like a year old, and you get it when you're like 4 to 6 years old. But to get vaccinated only happens in 1% of the population is available over the course of 1 year to be able to be vaccinated. So that can only, even if Kennedy persuaded every single parent not to vaccinate, he couldn't have moved the needle at all for the threshold difference of herd mortality versus not. So they're basically using and Michael Bloomberg writes this article saying, well, we got to get rid of Kennedy because look at the measles epidemic that he's caused. And anybody who understands math knows that that's ridiculous. He can't possibly move the needle at all.
So, and this is the question.
Not in the 6 months he's been in office, even.
Right.
I mean, it's like, come on.
Right.
So what this means is that measles it doesn't work.
100%. Right. I mean, and this is the comical thing too. Even the propaganda that came out of Texas around the measles so-called outbreak. I just read an article here. It's making its waves, even in Iowa, back in my hometown. They're like, we had a measles outbreak. We had a measles case, and the comical thing to me is that, prior to the measles vaccine, measles wasn't afraid. We didn't have this fear stigma around the measles because it's a benign issue. And, even with the talk about vitamin A and prevention of measles, and I have newspaper articles from a high school in Minnesota in the 80s. Okay. And they had a measles vaccination campaign come to the school, and there was a measles outbreak. There were 6 kids in the whole school that didn't get measles, but everybody else got measles. And guess who they blamed?
The unvaccinated, of course.
They blamed the unvaccinated kids. And it's comical because the unvaccinated kids never got measles. Are you kidding me? So what, and so my point is, unvaccinated children.
Don't tell anyone. You don't want to lose your license.
Right. It's like, the unvaccinated have superior immunity, first of all, but my point is vaccines can cause the very disease that they vaccinate for. We have a live attenuated, which means that you're breaking that down, that there is a vaccine induced measles, and so that needs to be talked about. So the kids that we have these measles outbreaks, it was that vaccine induced, and that's my question.
It certainly seems like it, right?
And
that's the most probable explanation, right?
Right. And, it goes to say that there is propaganda here at play. And this is why data and information is important. We need to get this information out. And so from your side, the data corruption, what other data corruption and propaganda have you seen in the States here?
Oh, autism. That's the elephant in the room, is autism.
Yes.
But a more clear example is the flu vaccine, right? Everybody's told, get your annual flu shot. We're targeting the variant that's going around. Flu vaccines don't work. They don't do shit. There was a study done in 2005 published in Annals of Medicine, and they were trying like anything. This is an NIH study, and they tried everything they could to prove that the measles vaccine worked, and they found it didn't work. So what happened? The story that Cheryl Atkinson did on it was pulled from the CBS News website so that nobody would know about it. And the scientists who were involved in the study were ordered by the CDC not to talk to the media. That's the flu study. So today, the CDC happily recommends the flu vaccine, even though they know from the NIH study that it doesn't work. And then there was a discontinuity study done by Anderson. I think it was in like 2020 or so. It's called the Anderson. It's called discontinuity study by Anderson, influenza. It's pretty easy to look up, and that was a brilliant study. What they did is they found they realized that in the UK, you turn 65, and what happens is we turn 65, and then there's step discontinuity because everybody's getting a flu shot because when you turn 65, you're eligible for some NHS benefit where lots of people get the flu shot. So there's a step discontinuity in terms of flu vaccination from age 64 to age 65. So they looked for a step discontinuity in terms of deaths, because if the flu vaccine really worked, the deaths would go down at age 65 compared to age 64. Mm-hmm. There was no discontinuity. And they're looking at hundreds of millions of people over this, like, I don't know, it was a 30-year period or something like that. And it was like, there was no signal. It's right. So ridiculous.
One of the best studies that I've ever seen regarding the flu vaccine was a study published in 2007 in the Association for Journal of Physicians and Surgeons. But it was a critical assessment of the ACIP recommendation for administering flu shot for pregnant women. And it was so well done. And I can send you that link to this study, but it was basically confirmed what you're talking about, how the flu shot is completely ineffective. And, and then if I have disclaimers of flu, like Fluvival, that say right on the shot that says, no one under 18 should be given this shot, but they're giving this flu shot now to in utero, pregnant moms, babies 6 months and older, and they recommend it every year. And it's comical to me. It's not even comical. It's evil. And people need to be talking about this, because what you said, the flu shot is ineffective. It should be off the market. And arguably, I would say that the flu shot is probably one of the top 3 most harmful vaccines on the market. And it causes more harm. My dad had a patient that got the flu shot, and within a day, she couldn't even walk.
Yeah. Not surprising. They only study benefit on vaccines. Vaccines are inherently safe, is their belief. And so they're only looking for they find a benefit signal. They say, good for you. And because they never placebo test these, there's always another vaccine that they tested against.
So I know what you mean, but just for our listeners, Steve, walk us through that. The standard of science.
Yeah. So normally in science, you test a vaccine against a placebo, a null intervention. And in the vaccine trials, instead of doing that, they tested against the closest you'll get to a placebo will be a saline solution with the adjuvant added. So the adjuvant is one of the things that causes lots of toxicity in people, and they add that to the shots in order to get an immune reaction, because otherwise, if they don't have that, then they don't get any kind of immune response, and the vaccine is considered ineffective. So they say, well, in order to, I'm not sure how you can possibly justify this, because it just makes no sense to me. They should be doing these placebo trials against a true placebo. And they don't. And And so then once the flu vaccine is approved, then the next flu vaccine is tested against the previous flu vaccine. And the reason for doing that is that they want to show safety and efficacy of the new one versus the old one. And they claim that it would be unethical to withhold the flu vaccine from somebody who's enrolled in the trial, right? Because they have to give them the, quote, standard of care. So these things are end up then being compared against themselves. So you compare an unsafe thing against an unsafe thing, and no safety signal. What a surprise.
Right. I mean, arguably, I think that, when it boils down to this topic, vaccinations are a religion. And, we can show people all the data in the world. We can show them all the science and the evidence, and still these people will not believe it. And it's like there's a stronghold on the minds of the people. What is it going to take, for these people to realize?
Yeah. What's it going to take? Well, I think it's going to take the CDC. It's going to take somebody of significance to blow the whistle. So, for example, John Ioannidis could blow the whistle on this, but he's not willing to look at the data that shows that the vaccines are causing harm. So, but somebody of that stature, like if Paul Offit were to say, hey, I got it wrong, vaccines are causing harm, we should remove these from the market, that might help move the needle. If there were 20 Paul Offits that are highly respected that came out and switched their position, that would have more impact. And it would be safer for everybody, because then they wouldn't be able to attack. They'd be able to attack one person or two people. But if you had like 20 or 30 people saying the same thing, that'd be really hard for them to silence. And it could take the CDC coming out with something like that as well. But then people would say, the CDC, they were just railroaded by RFK, and they're saying this even though they don't believe it.
Right. There's a quote out there. It is difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends upon him not understanding it. And I think the world we live in, for people to, it's to understand the truth. During COVID, I think that they overplayed their hand, and it really allowed the soil for truth to be rich, and it woke a lot of people up. The people realize that this is hogwash, but the people that are still like rolling up their sleeve, getting these boosters, that believe that all these vaccines are, they're a godsend, they're saving lives. And, really the reality of it is going to take a tragedy for those people to understand the truth. And I think, because what I think, we have people in office like Bobby Kennedy raising awareness on this, and thank God for that, but still people are not believing him. You can show people the truth, and you can lead a horse to the well, but they're not going to drink. And that's why I think it really is going to take a tragedy for these people to wake up. I mean, you might disagree, you might agree, but again, that's why I say this whole thing is spiritual. There's such a spiritual and psychological stronghold in the minds of the people around vaccination. Look at this, the Jesus statue. They put vaccination saves on the statue of Jesus. They put, the vaccine summit of 2019. They literally took out "In God We Trust," and they put "In Vaccines We Trust." Are you kidding me? I mean, this is why, it's so important. People like yourself and me, we stand in the gap. We keep bringing the truth to the people, because it's important. We are, and I would say argue that we are saving lives. The information that we're bringing out, because you said earlier, the COVID vaccine is killing people. I mean, look at the death rate in children with the COVID vaccine. You have to see an uptick in that slope with the children. I mean, look at this, Dr. Sabine's work, the forensic stools showing that there's a zero bifidobacterium in the colon post-vaccination. I mean, and look at the rise of cardiac arrest. I mean, and they're trying to say now myocarditis is normal in children. Are you kidding me? You have to be seeing those stats.
Yeah, I mean, they have to be seeing it, and some of them are just writing it off as but the benefit outweighs the risk, and therefore it's justifiable.
And that's a bumper sticker slogan. Those are bumper sticker slogans to get us from stop asking questions. The science is not settled. Science is never settled. That's the beauty of science. We keep learning, we keep evolving. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
The whole point.
It's like the stuff that I hear the science is settled on is whether vaccines cause autism. They always say the science is settled on that one.
Yeah, right.
No such thing.
No such thing.
It is settled actually. The science is settled on autism. It's vaccines do cause autism, but everybody believes that it's the reverse.
Yep. And you know what I'm seeing now? I'm seeing people that are highly functioning, that are like, I would say, normal people. They're maybe just extremely introverted. They're like, I'm autistic. And I'm getting in debates with people that are autistic. I'm like, I'm not talking neurodivergent people here. I'm talking people that, that were normal, that had 300-400 words in their vocabulary at 2 years of age. They're saying mommy and daddy, they're crawling, they're hitting their milestones, and they get a vaccine, and then boom, they're nonverbal. They can't even talk. They can't, now they're in diapers, and they're a teenager. They can't function on their own. They need full-time care. These are the people that I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about, autism. And autism diagnosis, Steve, walk us through how autism diagnosis, it's a joke. There's no observational, like there's no genetic marker for autism. There's no genetic testing for autism. It's just, healthy children, they get the vaccine, boom, they get autism.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the diagnosis procedure is, but I know that you can very quickly tell whether your kid is autistic or not.
It's a layperson. A layperson can diagnose it.
Absolutely. Like, it's very obvious.
Right. I mean, I encourage you to look at on how they diagnose it. To me, it's they're like, well, our diagnostics have improved. How? How is it?
Oh, they haven't. That's just the way to gaslight people.
That's exactly right. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, did the technology improve on the diagnostics for autism? It's all based off clinical data and what the physician observes. It's not even, and there's no objective, how do you say it, test for autism. It's all really speculation and saying, look, and so their speculation maybe has improved, but what did they observe from a speculative standpoint is that autism is on the rise. There's no denying that. In that whole diagnostic improvement is a lie. What has happened is the massive increase in vaccination rates. So I want to shift gears here and talk about mRNA technology, because now flu shots are going mRNA. Now this saRNA is coming out. We have all this, they're pushing more and more mRNA, and I think this will open the door. I think Big Pharma is drooling and salivating over this mRNA technology, because it's going to, how do you say it? I say it's tapping into genetic expression and genome altering. You look at the DARPA contracts in 2013, which I've been trying to blow the whistle on. But, what are your thoughts on mRNA and how this is causing cytotoxicity and really affecting the body from, a physiological standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, mRNA is a super dangerous vaccine methodology, because what happens is that the mRNA gets expressed by cells all over your body. It's not limited to a specific region, and so it just creates autoimmunity. It's horrible. So probably it's the worst technology that you could imagine for making a vaccine, because it creates autoimmunity. It makes the body attack its own organs.
So it's a arguably, I believe autoimmunity is like, I believe there's an innate intelligence inside the body, telling the heart to beat, the lungs to breathe, the cells to communicate. And, what's the one thing that tricks your body into having a disease? That's the vaccine. And again, and we have what's the percentage of increase in autoimmunity? Do you know? Over the last 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? The amount, you talk about slopes. What's the slope of autoimmunity?
No, I don't know. It's probably pretty large. Once they really rolled out the vaccines, we've seen just huge upticks in all sorts of chronic diseases, including
huge. It's
autism.
massive. Yeah. And, I argue that autoimmunity, just the word autoimmunity, was almost unheard of in the 80s, 70s, even just like autism. Autism was hardly even talked about. It was a word that wasn't really known. And now it's an everyday thing. It's a massive thing. And even MS, you look at the implementation. I'm not sure if you've seen data on MS and the implementation, like in France, that I saw articles about the implementation of hepatitis B and the massive uptick in MS on hepatitis B correlation. I mean, have you seen any data on that, Steve?
No, I haven't. It wouldn't surprise me.
Right. And so I just think of the people that, like these MS, I got asked to speak at the MS Foundation here in Nebraska 10 years ago. And I had like tiptoe around the fact, like, hey, you guys ever read a package insert and see that MS is listed on most of these vaccines as an adverse reaction? And it just is, so if people were to really understand the magnitude of what these vaccines are doing to our body and how they're affecting us and causing autoimmunity, these neurological problems, I mean, do you think that it would really cause a revolution overnight? And what would that do to our healthcare system?
Yeah, we need to get the word out about. There have been 10 papers published in the peer-reviewed literature that compared fully unvaccinated with fully vaccinated, and every time the unvaccinated do better. And yet we have people in the Senate telling Bobby Kennedy that he's putting kids in danger because he's telling them not to get vaccinated, when in fact these senators are the ones that we should be blaming. And, it's like, and they also say, oh, Mr. Kennedy, you're not following the science. The science shows that vaccines save lives, blah, blah, blah. No, the vaccine, the science, all the papers, 100% of the papers in the peer-reviewed literature, 100% show that the unvaccinated are healthier than the vaccinated. So who's following science and who's not?
Exactly right. The problem is their science is bought, and they obviously we can agree on that. And I think it's a very concerning time. And I think about, well, where do we turn when the science is bought, when the science is tailored and doctored? And this is where I argue we need to go to the clinical data. And I think that Paul Thomas, he has done good work in bringing that data, the clinical data, to the forefront. And I wish every physician would do that. And I think, what would it look like? Because we have ICD-9, ICD-10 codes that are for documented unvaccinated. So the clinical data is there. If you look into the ICD-9 and ICD-10 clinical codes, because physicians document whether the child's unvaccinated. So we have that data. It's just a matter of getting our hands on it.
Oh, yeah, but data transparency is not an expertise of any health authority in the entire world, other than maybe the Czech Republic, who I'm really impressed with their transparency.
I need to look into that, Stephen. I'm glad we talked about that. So what would you like, Bobby Kennedy? What would you like to see out of this administration? And would you
stop the shots? Stop the shots and return and get rid of the liability waiver and get rid of the EUA. Yeah, that'd be my 3 wishes if I had the genie in the magic lamp.
Right. And so the liability would have to eradicate the Vaccination Compensation Act. And I think, too, we need to have a reform in the VAERS. I think it should be mandatory that physicians are trained on how to file a report, and make it a very simple, but also done by physicians. And there needs to be more, because I think that if an injury doesn't get reported within 30 days, like, oh, there's no correlation. And that's another problem. I think, and I've always said what seeds are to the farmer to bring a crop, vaccines are to big pharma to bring disease. And we need to have that transparency and better reporting system. And doctors need to be trained on how to file a report. Well, Steve, I appreciate your time. I want to give you the final word, a word of encouragement. Also, what would you like to see going forward, what people can do, where people can find you, and just the last word of encouragement here.
Yeah, so people can find me on KirschSubstack.com, KIRSCH Substack, all one word, .com. Yeah, the best thing that people can do is just keep informed. You can subscribe to my Substack, and I have put out a lot of material to wake people up. But it's to be vigilant and don't trust in fact, you're probably better off taking whatever the CDC tells you to do and doing the opposite. But since RFK is in charge now, that may no longer be a reliable piece of advice. But I think that the point is that be suspicious and don't trust people that tell you stuff unless you can independently verify it. There's so much stuff that we're being told, certainly in the area of vaccines and health and so forth, that is just not supported by the science. And the COVID vaccine was the big wake up call for me. But since then I learned that all vaccines are pretty unsafe and unsuitable for human use. The only exception may be the rabies vaccine, where if you are bit by a rabid dog, then you'd want to get the rabies vaccine, because otherwise you can have, there's a very high probability you'll end up dead. So in that's maybe the one case where the risk benefit trade-off is in favor of the vaccine. So,
well, Steve, I admire you. I really appreciate your story and your testimonial. To me, a guy like you and is a brother from another mother. We have conviction that's greater than our fear of persecution. And I really tell that you have a genuine heart for the truth, and that's why I wanted you on my podcast. And and so, what would the world look like if us men, were to stand for injustice and really stand in the gap here? Because I like to say that we don't do this for publicity. We don't do this for prosperity. We do this because we know we're on the right side of history, and children are suffering. People are suffering from the injuries of these vaccines.
Yeah.
And so that's what this is about. And
absolutely.
And so God bless you, Steve. I appreciate you and the work you're doing very much. And so people that are listening, I go follow him. Steve is a wealth of knowledge, and he has a lot of good information he puts out. And so share this podcast far and wide. And we have to not be complacent in these times. Edmund Burke stated that the only thing for triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. And Thomas Jefferson said that if the people let the government decide what foods they eat, what medicines they take, their bodies will soon be in a sorry state as those souls who live under tyranny. We must fight for injustice. And again, it doesn't take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless of a minority lighting brush fires of freedom in the minds of the people. So we are on the right side of history. We're on the right side of truth, and God is for us. Who could ever be against us? Thank you, Steve. God bless you.
To August of last year, nobody really knew who I was.
There's about 12 people who are producing 65% of anti-vaccine misinformation.
We need to come together as Americans and realize that we have a war at hand here. Right?
Like, dude, how scared of this shit do you have to be to be wearing gloves, a face shield, and mask at this point?
Help us to urge folks and say to them, look, it's time to roll up your sleeve and get the shot.
Chiropractor in Omaha, Nebraska, responsible for 65% of the anti-vaccine misinformation. Put what I say to the test. Just don't write me off as crazy misinformation.
Doctor, please bring yourself in order.
600,000 people will die of cancer. 300,000 people will die of obesity this year. When is enough enough?